This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at GoDaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash.
This week on the Linux Action Show, we review the XFCE desktop and compare its lean features with the bloated competition. Plus, the dirty tricks Microsoft and Apple are playing, and a new Kickstarter game project committed to Linux. And so much more. Oh, this week, Linux Action Show! And welcome to the season finale of season 21 of the Linux Action Show. My name is B. Ryan. Next to me is C. Chris.
Good morning, B-Man. I gotta say, I really love this Runs Linux this week. This Tux Racer cabinet.
That's pretty great.
This runs Linux. This is really awesome. So, Rockstar Games works to develop with open source software to deploy games on Linux-based hardware platforms and arcades and multiple consoles. And check out this picture. This was submitted to the Linux Action Show subreddit by the Daft Rick. And I don't know how much this shows up on camera, but nope, doesn't show up on camera. There
it is.
Fins are used for steering. So you actually have little penguin Tux fins that you,
cool.
Wings or whatever that you push on to. Anyways,
that's cool.
It's just great. Tux Racer is a classic, and to see it running on a Linux powered arcade cabinet
that's fantastic.
Is extra special.
That's cool.
You know what I mean?
The fins is a nice touch.
Big week this week, B-Man.
No.
Lots going on. We got a big show.
No.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Really?
Big show. Well, we're going to bust out that XFCE review.
Which will change everything.
Everything's going to be different.
Absolutely everything.
We've got a news segment that's packed full of some interesting details. There's some battles between companies that are heating up, and we're going to cover that.
We will.
Yeah.
Most
Also,
likely.
Matt's going to stop by with a parental controls how-to for your Linux box.
Fantastic.
So if you got kids that use Linux, and you want to maybe make sure they don't go to some places, or they don't do some things,
right?
This segment will be good for you.
So this would be perfect for those of you who have kids, but don't want to spend time being parents.
Right. That's always the goal, right? That's just for when you're not having them watch the TV.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, if they're not watching DuckTales and they're on the computer, you don't want them browsing porn when you're not at home and they're home by themselves on the computer.
Right.
And they're 4.
And they're 4.
Right.
Exactly. So also we got our app picks coming up, and we've also got a couple of announcements we're going to make. But first, got to say good morning to the beautiful folks over at GoDaddy. Here we go.
Don't do the face thing.
Brian, I'm just here to tell you about GoDaddy. And I don't know what...
You're ruining it, dude.
Know what the problem is, Brian.
You're ruining it.
What?
Damn it. Get rid... Don't. Danica's there for a reason.
Actually,
Danica's there for a reason.
They've had like a vote all week about keeping Danica on the front page or not, and she hasn't been winning the entire time. I'll just say that. I don't know what the hell's wrong with people.
We have a link in the show notes where you can go and vote to keep Danica on the front page of GoDaddy.com.
Now,
do that.
Here's what everybody needs to focus on, though, because this is a really good deal. We get a few of these a couple of times a year from GoDaddy, and this is one of them. And it expires on the 25th, so I believe that's Friday. I believe it's the 25th that expires, yes? 24th. So it expires on the Thursday of the week this comes out. GoDaddy is offering 50% off their reseller program. And this is the deal where you can go there, you can register your .com, you host the website, and they do an integrated shopping cart where they do the credit card processing on the back end. They do the inventory management. They'll even give you templates for your website. They'll give you analytics too, so you can go in here and you can find out like what items are doing well. You can go in there and adjust prices for different countries. You can do profit calculations.
Yeah.
If you're doing rev shares, like affiliate links and stuff like that, you can do those kind of calculations. Then you can go pull all the metrics and all this kind of stuff. And they're offering 50% off. They have a pro plan and a super plan. You get 50% off.
That is a pretty good deal.
It's a great deal, and it's only going to be good until May 24th. So use our code 50res3. That's 50res3 to get that, and there's a link in the show notes. Also, we just have a regular old good deal. If you're a first-time customer, you can get 25% off your entire order if you use the code 25May8.
Now, that all sounds great and money-saving and all that, but seriously, show notes, vote for Danica to keep Danica on the front page, because the other option is this dude.
It's a dude.
I don't even know who the dude is. Yeah. It's just some dude.
It would kind of look like this.
That'd be so terrible. Except the other dude that you'd be in front of has short hair like you.
Yeah.
So it would just be
A dude.
you with different short hair.
It'd be a dude.
It'd be a dude, dude.
I know.
It's not cool. Keep Danica on GoDaddy.com. Do not have her on there. It would be a travesty. What's your Android pick?
I got a technical one this week. In fact, it even requires that you have a rooted device.
Oh my goodness.
And this has been on my radar for months, but I hadn't picked it because honestly, it looked like it must be kind of hokey. But I bumped into a viewer, Paul, at Linux Fest Northwest, who had this on his Android device, and he let me play with it. And if you've got a decent enough Android device, this app pick might be a good one for you. It's called Linux Installer, and it's free. You do need to have root. You have to have about 50 megabytes to download all of the packages for this, and then about another 180 megabytes for Linux. But you don't partition. It stores it all inside of an image file. And you actually can install Debian inside an app on your phone. It runs in a little virtualizer.
Yep. You
can also do Ubuntu. And then what it does is it creates a VNC connection into that and actually lets you move around inside this Linux box using a VNC client.
That's pretty cool.
It's not bad. It's definitely more, I think, probably for playing.
It's just to show that you can.
I think, unless maybe there was a couple of apps you really needed
on the go. Yeah.
And then this might do that for you.
Yeah.
So I know it's not going to appeal to all people, but those of you out there,
it's kind of cool just the same.
Yeah, you might check it out.
I did something similar on my N900 just so I could get like a full. I mean, N900 is full on normal Linux anyway, unlike Android.
The normal
devices.
Linux.
Yeah, but normal Linux, right? But I got it set up so I had a full XFCE desktop.
Right.
You know what I mean? So a nice full desktop. I even got KDE rocking on there. And is it usable? It's pretty slow and whatnot. But come on. It's cool just to have done it.
Yeah. I hear you, B-Man. All right. Well, we've got an app pick this week, and then we've got a distro pick, and then an announcement. There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff. All right, let's bang right through this.
Okay.
All right, the app pick this week I won't spend too much time on because it's something that I made. It's called Brian Lunduke's Awesome Blocks of Awesome. And if you see my Illumination Software Creator, which is a visual way to make apps, this is a visual way to make games. Huh. Basically,
cool
it's like a painting program for generating games, generating arcade games, what have you. In fact, the sample game it comes with is kind of like Space Invaders. It's really easy to do. The little sample application that I put together maybe took 60 seconds to make. I mean, literally, it's mega fast. It's not programming. The idea is basically you take a block, you create a new block, you give it a color or a picture or whatever you want it to look like, and you say these are its properties, and then you just paint with it, and you create a game. And then I've also just recently announced that when you click the export button in Brian Lunduke's Awesome Blocks of Awesome, which is currently in beta, and the acronym for Brian Lunduke's Awesome Blocks of Awesome is BLABA.
BLABA.
So BLABA is in beta. So right now there's a BLABA beta going on right now, which is a lot of fun to say. I like saying BLABA beta very, very much. But when you click the export button, it exports for Windows, Linux, and Mac as little standalone executables that you can then redistribute your games.
Nice.
And also for Nintendo DS, DOS, and HTML5.
What?
So if you want to make your game, you can put it up on your website,
Nintendo DS?
HTML5. You can release it on all three major desktop platforms. You can release it for DOS, which means you can stick it in DOSBox and run it on Android or something else, and Nintendo DS.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
One freaking button. Boom, all from your Linux desktop.
I love that you're doing DOS.
BLABA.
I love that. But DOSBox is very portable.
Dude, DOSBox is just so portable. I had to do it.
I like your theme throughout.
You like it?
Yeah, you got the text here on the buttons that matches the text on the site, which matches other apps. It's a nice, Lunduke theme across
Everything's all tied
stuff.
together in hardcore.
That's a nice touch.
There's a contest going on right now. Do you remember the Raspberry Pi, Chris?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Those darn friggin' things are finally shipping out.
Yeah.
I got one coming to me.
Yeah.
It is earmarked for the winner of a contest that I am calling the Build Something Fun and Win Some Pie contest. So you can use BLABA, you can use Illumination Software Creator. The contest is you go to the website, find the details, lunduke.com. You create something you think is fun, a game, a piece of art, something ridiculous, some sort of interactive story, whatever you want to create that you think is fun. It doesn't have to be finished, just something fun. Submit it to me. You got like 2 weeks. The winner wins a Raspberry Pi, and then the follow-up runner-up winners just win some games from GOG.com.
Nice.
So anyway, that's all I got going on.
Cool.
I want to pass that back over to you because that's the thing that we do.
Let's do the random distro spinner. Are you ready, B-Man?
Oh, man, I'm so ready. I'm so ready.
Tell me when.
Okay, you can stop. It doesn't matter. It is already picked. I mean, that's just the theatrics and stuff and the whatnot. So we got to say this name.
Why am I doing that?
Because you want to do it. You want to spin the thing.
Oh, I thought okay.
You love spinning wheels.
I know. I thought I was.
No, it's your spinning thing, dude. I don't want to take that away from you.
You just did.
Dude. I'm sorry, man.
Okay.
Can we pretend like this whole thing never happened and you can do it again next week?
Okay.
All right. The pick this week, I don't know how to pronounce this, but I'm pretty sure it is Doo-Doo Linux.
It would have to be, I believe.
I'm pretty confident it is. Now, this Linux distro actually looks kind of cool. Basically, what it is, it sits on top of Debian. It uses LXDE as the desktop environment, but it's heavily customized and made for kids.
Yeah.
So it's filled with kids' games and educational tools and whatnot, gcompreg and all the other stuff that you want to load up on a kid's desktop for Linux, all preloaded, pre-configured with a nice little simple one-click sort of launcher environment. It is really, really slick in that regard. This is not going to be your desktop at home.
No.
But for your kid,
I could
get your
totally
kid
see
like
this.
a little tiny netbook or something like that. Put this on there with no drive so the kid can bang it around because it's only got like a 4 gig SSD card in it or something. Like one of those old EEEs.
This would be rocking.
This would be perfect.
This would really be perfect. This is probably exactly what I'll do for Dylan. Dylan right now is sort of owning my MSI Wind. And I just have Unity on there.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It works, but this I think would be a little easier for him because honestly, Dylan and now also my daughter, she gets older, just expects everything to be a touch screen, and so that's kind of a disconnect. But
yeah, so that's a little.
He's working
different.
with the mouse. It's definitely though. I mean, like the touchscreen devices, he's got down like nothing. He can use them totally, completely, but when it comes to the mouse, that's a little different.
A little harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, B-Man. Well, I got a special announcement I want to make before we moves rights along.
I love it when you make special announcements.
I know, me too.
Yeah, it's really nice.
'Cause I don't get to do it that often.
Not that often. It's fun, isn't it?
But this week we released the first episode of the new show Unfilter over at Jupiter Broadcasting. Episode 1, we decided to go big. We took on cannabis prohibition, and we talked about some interesting data and what I'm calling the cultural debt that cannabis prohibition puts us in. We talk about that in this episode.
My goodness.
I'm putting it out every Monday, too, because I want people to be able to get this when they grab last. So it'll be out early Monday a.m. So if you grab last for your commute, you can grab
just
Unfilter.
grab this to go with it.
Then you got the companion show. Well, they're not really related
They're
at all.
not related in any way
It's going to be a
whatsoever.
great show. We're going to get the story behind the story. We're going to talk about things
Other
about the
than
politics and the BS.
I'm pretty sure we have a lot of hippies that watch the Linux Action Show.
That's true.
And the hippies like the cannabis stuffy what?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
so I'm just saying they might be enjoying whatever that is, whatever this is.
This has been a big effort
Squishy,
because,
squishy.
I've also been running that filterfree.me blog, and, frequently blogging takes some practice. And following these stories, doing the research on cannabis prohibition and how it originally kind of became outlawed and that whole process, because, it used to be legal. You used to be able to buy cannabis ointments over the counter and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 1937 that it actually became illegal at a federal level. And the whole history of that is extremely interesting. And now to compare some of that to what people say today and how a lot of it kind of matches up was a really interesting project to work on.
Awesome.
So we've got some interesting clips and things like this. So go check it out. Unfilter episode 1. It's out now, and you can download it, and it'll be out every Monday. I released it early just for the last audience because I know you guys are going to love it.
Get a jump start on it.
So go check it out.
Fancy pants, man.
All right, B-Man, let's do the news.
What's new in the news this week?
All right, B-Man, get ready for this load of crap because Microsoft has won a ban against Motorola on Android devices from the ITC.
What?
This is getting like heated up.
This is so stupid.
And of course, this probably sounds familiar because Apple just recently won a ban against HTC for the One X and Evo 4G. And what's happening is it's coming into U.S. Customs and Borders, and they have the elective to enforce these or not, and they are electing to enforce them based on the ITC court ruling because it's the International Trade Court, and it's
stupid internationals.
So ITC sided with Microsoft, ruling that Android devices infringe on U.S. patent number 6370566, issuing an order that could keep products like the Razr, the Atrix, the Zoom tablet, and several other models off U.S. shelves in the future. Patent 566, we'll just call it for short, claims all the way back to 1998. That's when this patent was awarded, and covers appointment scheduling and using email addresses and contact information and synchronizing those events across phones and PCs. So every smartphone ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
Every PDA.
Yeah. So Motorola has 2 months to respond, just like HTC is currently in their ability to respond phase right now. Also, I didn't even know this was a thing, but Motorola is required to post a bond set at a reasonable royalty rate of 33 cents per device to Microsoft until this entire thing goes up for presidential review and Obama makes a decision.
Oh, God.
Can you believe this?
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
This has got to be collusion between Apple and Microsoft.
I don't know.
Microsoft goes after Motorola, Apple goes after HTC.
I don't know. They might be giving each other high fives in the back room. They are,
because the last time big lawsuits went around, it was Apple went off after one company and Microsoft went after the other.
Maybe. It is either way. It's lame. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It almost doesn't even matter who's doing it or who they're working with. It's just totally lame. It's just so lame.
It is so lame.
Seriously lame. I mean,
and what worries me is any Tizen device would violate that patent.
Yeah, but Tizen's so lame.
But
I'm just kidding. Tizen's not
any
that lame.
WebOS device.
Yeah, no, everything. I mean, well, seriously,
every Apple, although
every Palm OS device.
In theory, a lot of those vendors, like I've read that, like Apple specifically licensed this patent from Microsoft.
What was the year the patent was?
1998.
Now, here's what I don't get. This is patenting something that every Palm OS version ever has done. Mm-hmm. All the Newton devices did. Mm-hmm. Tons and tons of portable devices did back in the day. Those old little HP Palm Tops. Those did that back then. Yeah. They ran like DOS 3 or something like that back in the early 90s. Those all did that. That was way before 98.
And you know that this kind of syncing was a tethered type of syncing back in 1998. And these devices are doing it over the air with a completely different implementation using a completely different service.
I mean, it's still syncing though. But I get that. But still, I mean, there's so much prior art. I don't understand. Like, I get how a company is going to act like a jerk and try and go after someone for the patent. What I don't get is how the lawyers and the lawyers for the defense then were not able to come up with decent looking prior art, which confuses me. Or if they did, the judge is like, prior art? Don't understand prior art mean. What mean computer before 1998? And so either one happened or the other. So either we have completely inept attorneys defending some of the most important technology, or we have judges who don't understand what prior art or a computer is.
Methinks you're
right.
Either
way, that's really scary.
And the companies that do understand are manipulating the system and in some way taking advantage of people who don't understand.
I think what's going on is basically these companies are like, you know what, let's just throw every patent out. Let's just throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And 9 out of 10 times, the judges are like, no. But then they get one retard judge with one set of defense attorneys that don't know what they're doing, and all of a sudden, boom, one sticks and it screws everyone over.
And from their perspective, you got to figure that they look at it like, a lot of these patents are acquired, right? And so they say, they have a board that says you spent maybe $1 billion acquiring this portfolio of patents. And now that you have those, you need a return on that investment and you need to use them against your competitors because that's why you spent $1 billion on something.
That's why you did
So there's almost like this pressure, I bet, internally to use them because they're such an investment that they've made. So it's...
lame.
It's messed up.
It's just lame. I want to see these Here's the thing that bugs me. Apple and Microsoft have both done cool things in the past.
I've heard that.
They both have.
Maybe.
Why? Like, they have. I mean, you know what?
Okay.
Well, Apple didn't really do that. Apple just took that from someone else and made it a little better.
Cups is good.
But Apple didn't do that.
Oh,
they just
okay.
But they have done... Hold on. How about this? HyperCard and AppleScript.
Okay, all right.
I mean, we have to go way back.
All right.
But Apple has done some cool things. Okay. Microsoft has done cool things in the past. Don't think about that one too hard.
Okay.
But they have done cool things. Why not put all that time and energy? And I know some people who work down at those companies. They're good, smart, amazing folks.
The thing. Yeah.
Why not just, instead of sitting on their butts, why not just do something amazing, blow us all away, and make Android and Google go out of business in 3 days because it's so inferior to everything they make.
They have so much money, they think they can do both.
Come on, guys, do something cool.
I agree, B-Man.
How hard is it to do something cool? I am one damned guy. So here's the thing that bugs me. So
that's why it's easier.
It friggin' annoys me.
In some ways.
It friggin' annoys me because it's so easy to compete against all these guys. Android, I like Android. I have an HTC Flyer running Honeycomb. Mm-hmm. It's decent. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It's not that good considering all the money Google's pumped into it. It's kind of slow. It's kind of buggy. There's UI problems. There's SDK inconsistencies between versions.
And Honeycomb is not doing very well in the market.
It's just... I don't understand why they can't spend all that money they're spending on patents and put it into real innovation and real. Anyway, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it friggin' confuses the heck out of me.
I hear you, B-Man. Well,
What the heck?
While we're talking about Google, let's talk about something that's a little lighter on the Linux side. Ubuntu just got done with their Ubuntu Developer Conference. And this week I'm going to try to say Ubuntu, a bunch of different ways just to screw with everybody. And there was a presentation there by a Google developer, Thomas Bushell. He talked about how Ubuntu and its derivatives are used at Google. So I thought we'd cover that because it's kind of interesting. A big corporation.
Well, according to Google, absolutely every computer at Google has to be running Linux or and Ubuntu. They've said this a couple of years back. They said absolutely every single machine, unless they had to, because they just had to run Photoshop or something like that.
So here's what he says. He says that he thinks that the new 1204 rocks, and that Google employees, including managers, software engineers, translators, and people who wrote the original Unix use it. They're either using Ubuntu at Google or they use Goobuntu. What is Goobuntu? Goobuntu, which we've actually seen leaked online a few times, is Google's version of Ubuntu that's based on the last long-term support release. They make no changes to the default UI, but they do use their own security authentication system and their own internal repository system, kind of like Launchpad.
That's kind of cool.
They also say that they swap out a few of the default apps, like they take out Ubuntu One. They call that purged from the system, and they also take out things like core dump sending because they don't want any confidential information from Google leaked
sending out. Yeah, that makes sense. I get that.
Ubuntu systems at Google are upgraded every long-term support release. The entire process. Now, tell me what you think of this. The entire process of upgrading can take as long as 4 months, and it also is quite expensive, as one reboot or a small change can cost them as much as $1 million. But they're not upgrading to 1204 just yet. They're staying at 1004 until like a Python thing is worked out or something like that.
Okay. That's fair enough.
$1 million for a reboot?
Well, I mean, if you...
I know what he's saying. He's like, well, if you take the entire organization and you have everybody reboot at the same time, or even if you kind of stagger
if you have downtime of an hour across the organization, that gets really expensive.
Schedule the reboots to happen at 1 a.m. Right? I mean, what's the big, you don't got to do it while everybody's there, do you? I don't understand. These things are scriptable.
You're talking crazy talk here, Chris. You got to do it. You got to do it right about 3 p.m.
Right.
When everyone's trying to get their work done before they go home.
Right.
That's when you got to do it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've had clients that do mandate that. That way they make sure everybody's there and everybody's machine is on. So you never know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got some good Mandriva news. At least I hope it's good Mandriva news. Now, everybody remembers the state of Mandriva has been in a lot of flux lately with financial backers pulling out.
Yeah.
And all those kinds of things. But Mandriva will return to the community. Mandriva SA took the decision to transfer responsibility of the Mandriva Linux distribution to an independent entity. So it won't be handled directly by the Mandriva company anymore. We intend to let the distribution evolve under the care and responsibility of the community. Mandriva SA, of course, will still be part of the entity and support it with direct contributions.
Good.
Next month, a work group of community representatives is in the next few months, a work group of community representatives is being set up starting right now. This work group will be assigned the task to define structures, processes, and organizations of the new entity, and will start to work in the next few days. So
that's cool.
Getting things are moving.
That's cool. Now, I mean, you kind of would almost think, though, because, I mean, we already kind of have this in the form of the Magia or however you pronounce it. You kind of almost would think that, a Mandriva would just toss in with those guys since they already kind of got it going.
Maybe that's what's going to happen.
Or maybe we'll see the Magia guys kind of folded back into the public organization. That'd be
definitely
cool.
Should do something like that.
Because I would hate to see it separated and fragmented
I think
too much.
They could,
it's a cool system.
I would like to see them either keep the Mandriva name or even go back to Mandrake if they could.
God, Mandrake would be great.
Mandrake would be like awesome. Like they'd be like, oh, let's go check it out again. Mandrake would generate buzz.
You know what they do? They need to come up with like a series of videos with just like a phoenix rising from the ashes and then Mandrake.
That would be awesome.
Dude, that would rock and roll. I would give it a shot again.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about something I want to get your input on. The details are pretty sparse, but you remember this Wasteland 2 Kickstarter that got funded, and then if you met the next threshold, they'd throw in with Linux support, right?
Yep.
So they've announced that Wasteland 2 will use the Unity 3D engine, which, as of right now, that don't run on Linux. So they go on to say that down here, that people started asking this. Brian Fargo, right? I believe that's how he says his last name. He's the guy that started the Kickstarter project. He said that the game will be an executable. It's not going to be a browser-based game like some Unity games are.
Yeah.
And that they will be supporting Linux. He says they have been supplied the source code to Unity for the express purpose of making the Linux version. Now, Unity does set up some per case and per title special licensing agreements.
Yeah.
I unless I'm wrong here, I don't think this means Unity is coming to Linux. I think it means their binary is going to come with a working version.
It's a one-off port of Unity to Linux for the purpose of bringing this game to Linux.
But it maybe
which happens all the time.
Maybe it'll lay some groundwork to see more games. I don't know.
That would be great. I mean, yeah.
But they're going to own that code. They're licensing that code from the Unity.
They're going to own the rights to keep that code. They can't. I don't think they can redistribute that code to someone else or anything like that. But they have the rights to it, and that's great.
Speaking of Kickstarter stuff.
Yes. Now this is what I'm pumped about.
Yes.
Oh boy.
I actually threw in money for this.
Yeah, I did too.
And because it was actually super cheap. So
why not, right? Yeah. All right. So if you remember Space Quest, you know I'm a huge fan of adventure games.
Yeah.
I even made my own adventure game because I like adventure games so much. Space Quest. Those guys, the two guys from Andromeda, as they're known, they don't really have the rights to Space Quest. That's still owned by whoever bought Sierra and whatnot. But the spiritual successor has a Kickstarter. And here's what's cool about it. So they're going to make an adventure game that's in space, and it's got all the comedy of the old Space Quest games. But there isn't some $5 million goal and we might port it to Linux. It's right out of the gate. Yeah. Linux. Right out of the gate.
You got to like that, right?
Straight up, this is coming to Linux, end of story. And I love that. If you scroll all the way down, it has voice acting from some amazing folks all the way down there. Gary Owen is doing it. If you remember him as the announcer from Laugh-In, and he also did the voiceovers of some of the original Space Quest games. Scroll down a little further. There's some headshots. There you go. The Pinky from Pinky and the Brain is in it.
The guy from StarCraft.
Some guys. The lady who did Gladys's voice from Portal 1 and 2 is in it. John Patrick Lowry, who did a ton of voices from the Half-Life games, is in it. Yep. I mean, amazing voice talent
Halo
is in
Reach
this
as well.
And it's coming to Linux, assuming that this actually gets funded. And it looks fantastic.
Yep. Love it. And if you throw in different money, they have different cool things you get at different entry levels, including like box sets and special collector's items. So like all Kickstarter things that do it right, they seem to be doing a pretty good one.
It's So in my opinion, it's at least worth kicking in a little low amount, just because you're going to want to buy the game anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Way cool.
Well, I think that's all the news.
Is that it?
I think so.
Can that be all the news for this week?
B-Man?
Chris!
B-Man, I'm going to call it.
Chris, that's all the news for this week. I want to review XFCE.
Okay. I thought this would be an interesting desktop to look at because so many people out there, when we said, remember when I just kind of just nonchalantly said, if you want us to look at XFCE, let us know.
Everyone was like, yes, why haven't you done this? It's really stupid. You guys are retarded. I can't believe you guys exist because you haven't reviewed XFCE.
I actually did kind of realize it probably should be on our list of shame.
Should have, yeah. We really haven't before.
No.
Yeah.
so we're gonna try to right that wrong in this week's episode. And I was struggling with mentally how to take on an XFCE.
Wait,
review.
you were struggling mentally?
Well,
you had some mental struggles?
I have split personality, I got a KD user and a GNOME user in me, and they keep constantly battling back and forth. And then when it came time to use XFC and how to look at it, you should have seen the fight these two had, Brian. It got weird because KD got drunk. Anyways, but I thought I'd take this inspiration from Linus right here. Linus posted back in August 2011, so almost a year ago. He said on Google+, he criticized the direction GNOME's taking you with GNOME 3. He called GNOME 3 an unholy mess, and said the experience is unacceptable, adding that because GNOME 3, he has ditched GNOME for XFCE.
Sure as heck.
He said that XFCE, though, is a step down from GNOME 2, but a huge step up from GNOME 3.
Right.
So here we are, a year later, XFCE 4.10 is out. It's a pretty good release. Is XFCE still a step down from GNOME 2? I thought that would be the approach I could take. So if I'm coming from, we have a lot of people in the audience who are using Arch with GNOME 2 or using Ubuntu 10.04 with GNOME 2.
Yeah.
And I thought from their perspective, could they transition from a GNOME 2 desktop to an XFCE desktop? And I say that being GNOME 2 is probably collectively the desktop I spent the most time on for one period of time. Because since GNOME 2, I've just jumped around a lot.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Now-
you want to take it from that angle?
Yeah, let's take it from there. Now, for me personally, I totally disagree with Linus. I think XFCE has always been great, but it's been a totally different thing than GNOME 2.
Yeah.
Some of the user experience is similar,
Yeah.
but overall, I mean, like it was geared towards being a little bit faster, a little more lightweight.
Lightweight.
Yeah.
So, the first thing that strikes me about it is it's very much more, though, a conventional desktop like GNOME 2. Like, and this is Ubuntu install I have here. You get, your standard app menu. There's no crazy launcher.
Yep.
I've loaded it with a dock, too, because I just thought that, I just add that. I'm not actually a big dock fan, but a lot of
dock
people...
are you using?
I'm using Docky here.
Docky's great.
The other ones, like Avant and stuff, were a little crashy. And
it comes with a dock-ish sort of thing by default.
It does. Yeah, it's another panel,
it's
really.
terrible.
Yeah.
So let's start with that, actually. So XFCE comes with a dock by default.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically a panel, and it starts the default configuration in XFCE 4.
It might be Ubuntu setup, actually.
No, it's a standard.
Oh, okay.
I think it's standard XFCE 4.
Okay.
At least I didn't install the Xubuntu packages. I just XFCE 4. I thought that was the default, but anyway, that dock is terrible.
Yeah,
it's ugly. It's difficult to manage.
I just pulled it.
It's just I just yank it right away. And me personally, I didn't go with any dock whatsoever.
Yeah,
I went with one top panel.
Yeah.
And kind of recreated the old school GNOME 2 experience.
You know what always works so well for me is GNOME Do. Because then you just do GNOME Do, Chrome, and you're done.
Yep.
And I don't know if people that aren't watching the video version, that was extremely fast. I would say XFCE definitely feels like it is the peppiest of the desktops. Peppier than KDE, peppier than GNOME 3, peppier than Cinnamon, and peppier than Unity. It's very
fast.
snappy. Now, part of that, I think, is because it's not using Compiz effects. So the menus just materialize instantly. They don't fade in, fade out. It's an instantaneous thing.
There's more to it than that.
There is, but I think there is some of that to it.
So I did a couple of tests. So I loaded up so both GNOME Shell, Unity, and XFCE, all in the same exact netbook. My little Lenovo, because my Lenovo isn't terribly fast. So
I've got KDE
bigger applications.
4.8 Unity and XFCE on this box right now.
Bigger applications always take at least like a second to kick in.
Totally.
So I thought, well, let's look at app launch times between the different desktop environments.
Okay.
Big difference. XFCE apps launch nearly twice as fast as apps under Unity and GNOME Shell.
Why do you suppose?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Even apps like, let's say, Chrome or Chromium. I launch Chromium. It launches about twice as fast under the exact same system with the same libraries
so I'm
loaded.
Launch Firefox.
Just a different desktop environment in use.
This will be the first time I've launched Firefox since this OS is booted, and I'll launch that. And that pretty much just fires right up instantaneously.
It is astoundingly faster. Now, it could just be that it is just generally lighter weight, so there's not as much resources to compete with.
I don't know if that might be a bit of a misnomer, though, because now, of course, your system's going to use, this is all based on your available memory right now, but this XFCE installation I'm using right now, with nearly
only a gig of RAM in use.
I got 981 megabytes of memory.
But your CPU usage is nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely low. And let's see, what's taking the most memory? Chrome has got a bunch of...
No. So that's the thing, is almost all of your RAM is taken up with Chrome right now.
Yeah,
Close
sure
Chrome.
is. I only have one tab open in Chrome.
I bet you anything, if you kill off Chrome, your memory use is going to go through the floor.
Okay, so now we'll go back to memory usage here, and now down to 500
megs,
529 megabytes,
and that's with the applets and the panels running, and the system monitor running, and all the libraries loaded,
and also the libraries for the programs I've just ran still cached and things like that.
Yep.
So, because it is using some type of compositing, I'm not actually really familiar with how that works, but I saw an option in here. But because it isn't really utilizing Compiz much, my video card runs a lot cooler. But I do kind of miss some of the pizzazz. They in XFCE 4.10, they've introduced a new control panel area that is pretty good. It's pretty concise, and it's got most of the things you'd want, and
it's fine.
It's nice. Yeah,
it's really not that much different than some of the other control panels out there.
But this was the big valley missing between like GNOME desktops and XFCE desktops, say like back in the early 4.0 and earlier days. Was this kind of stuff wasn't there, but now these are actually fully fleshed out configuration options that you now have in here, whereas before these were very minimal. And now we're talking. I still find like panel management a little clunky, a little tiny bit clunky.
The way the panels work is very static.
And also, I've noticed Thunar, the first time you launch the file browser, it takes a while. So I'll launch it, and now we're waiting. Everything else is instantaneous.
Wait, I don't think you launched it.
I did. That's how.
Whoa.
And I thought maybe that was like a Ubuntu thing.
That is not doing it on my machine like that.
I loaded it up on Debian stable, Now it's an older version of XFCE, but Thunar still took a long time to launch. I think it's Thunar.
Now see, I've noticed that Thunar is not necessarily the peppiest to launch application out there.
Once you load it, though, it's
fine.
fast. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely on my on my little machine. I wish I had it with me. Thunar does not take that long to launch. But I mean, it just doesn't. But that's no good.
Yeah, people in the chat room are agreeing that Thunar is just kind of slow.
Yeah, that's not good. So there is downsides to that. Now, generally, overall, the file browser Thunar is not my favorite. It's fine. It gets the job done. Yeah. But it's not, in my opinion, it's no Nautilus.
Yeah.
It does not really compete all that well with what KDE's got going on.
I'll tell you, here's how I came down on it. I was able to essentially replicate my work environment that I have in Unity in a sense, because I have what I like about Unity is I actually use the launcher a lot, but GNOME it does most of that for me just fine.
Yeah.
There's also this little launcher applet up here. I also have I'm running Quake, that slide down terminal that comes by default under Ubuntu. And all of these things make for a very peppy desktop. I kind of miss HUD.
Do you?
And I kind of miss some of the overall integration, like with Empathy has with the messaging desktop. But what I find is with the Ubuntu desktop or XFCE desktop, I'm able to roll my own solutions. Like instead of using Empathy, I'm using Pigeon. And I just chose Docky, and Docky has a Pigeon plugin. So now I have that same type of integration with Pigeon, which I prefer. And I'm able to use Chromium easier because on Unity, it's still always launching Firefox. These types of little differences, I'm able to use Quake, just integrated,
which is nice.
Feels clunky on Unity.
I like Quake. Quake is awesome.
All these kinds of things, it's like I'm able to roll my own, but I have to do all of the work. So if you want to do that and you want to tweak and customize, it seems like a really good way to go to get a low resources desktop.
See, that's kind of where I keep coming down on XFCE. It's if you want to really heavily tweak out your system, but you want something that's a little more lightweight, XFCE is the way to go. But I mean, really, if you want to heavily tweak out your system, like GNOME Shell and GNOME 3 is so infinitely customizable nowadays.
Well, so is KDE.
And so is KDE 4. So it's hard. I think where
I would use this is if I didn't care about the shinies. I just wanted a very practical desktop.
Yeah.
It was low resources. It got out of my way.
Yeah. No, so see, after playing with it and really comparing the speed between the two between the various desktops, I kind of like XFCE on my little netbook because it just runs so much faster.
Yeah.
Now, then again, it doesn't even hold a candle to running something more like Awesome Window Manager or Xmonad or something that's just not lightweight, but just almost non-existent.
Right.
It's so lightweight.
Yeah.
But if you want something that's more like old school Ubuntu, this is really it.
Yeah.
I mean, people complain about they missing the old school Ubuntu, the old school GNOME 2 desktop. This is it. I mean, this is the way to go. This is the way forward, not to fork GNOME 3 and GNOME Shell and try and make it pseudo look like kind of ish GNOME 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Not to fork GNOME 2 entirely, even though it's end of life. But XFCE is under constant development. It's well supported. It's got a long history.
Yeah.
XFCE is great, and there's no technical reason you can't run every application on the planet. So it's not like you're going to be dead ended if you run XFCE. So I look at XFCE as the spiritual successor, which is really not because it's been around for so long, to GNOME 2.
Yeah, and one couple of just nice improvements that have come along with 4.1 is they have a new application finder. So when you launch an app that the system doesn't know, like if you launch a file, the system doesn't know what app it's associated with, it'll try to find the right app. And it's a very clean interface, very well done, and very intelligent. A lot of work on the panels, but I still think the panels have some room to go. But overall,
I think the panels are fantastic. I just am not a big fan of the way the panels are modified.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the panel preferences layout. It works just fine. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing you really can't do.
Right.
It's just a matter of I don't really particularly like how it's laid out. I mean, just moving around stuff within the panels is kind of a pain, but it's doable.
Mm-hmm.
And really, how much time do you spend doing that? How much time do you spend setting everything up? Now, we spend a lot of time doing that because we keep installing new distros every 4.5 days.
Mm-hmm.
But a normal person's going to set it up, and even if you're super nerdy and reinstall every few months, that's, spending 2 or 3 hours setting up your system every couple of months at most.
Do you intend to keep using it?
XFCE?
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to, even though I love it and I might use it in some situations. I want the new stuff. That's why I keep going with like the GNOME and Cinnamon and Unity, is because at the core of it, I'm still interested in where everything's going. So I still kind of have to cover it for the show too.
Yeah.
Whereas XFCE, I feel like if I wasn't very interested in keeping very current and I was okay just watching what happened, not really participating,
that'd be a great way to go.
It'd be a great way to go.
Yeah.
Not that they're not blazing their own trail in their own right. It's just if it's not the trail I want to follow because it's not as exciting. That might seem, see if that sounds silly to you, then XFCE is probably the right desktop.
Yeah, see, XFCE I think is a great desktop. Honestly, I like the layout of XFCE more than I like the default layout of Unity, GNOME Shell, or KDE4. I prefer it. But
because it's more familiar.
But GNOME Shell and KDE4 I can modify pretty substantially to make it look kind of like this if I wanted to.
Yeah, you can.
But honestly, for me, I have the exact opposite problem. This is a little too new and shiny for me. Like this
really?
is XFCE is a little too I like the bling. Don't get me wrong. I love
There's
the
not
effects.
a lot of. I mean, you could always turn off the theme. I suppose that's about as blingy as it gets.
But what I've gotten to a point where I like to focus on what I'm doing really hardcore.
Yeah.
And I like the full screen customizable tiled window managers like Xmonad and Awesome. I've really just gotten that way.
See, that's actually how I use Unity. Is I full screen it. And there's a little hack you can do to make the little sidebar disappear.
Yep.
What do they call that?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Yeah.
You can do it in the tweaks.
I know what it is. I just blank it out. And then you go full screen, and that's why I really like HUD, because you tap HUD and you just type the thing you want, and then it, like new tab.
Yeah. See, I've played around with it like that, but I like having multiple, basically the equivalent of multiple virtual workspaces, all with different layouts where everything's full screen, but everything is laid out into chunks, so everything's in a grid form.
But
I like XFCE. It's a nice desktop.
I think I've made this app pick before. I think I've mentioned this app before on the show, but Terminator is what I use. So then
it's a good one.
Yeah,
Terminator's great.
Then you go like that, and you get multiple. So I'll do like one thing that's really extra long on this one. So maybe like run top on a side panel that's really tall, and then you do your other.
And then
things.
you teln that into bbs.lunduke.com on the left. Yeah.
So and you can keep. And what I like about Terminators, you can just keep splitting your consoles into more and more things, and then you can send your input across all of them.
See, I like things like that, but I end up needing, even if I'm using terminals, I end up needing different terminals with different terminal emulations for different projects.
See, I'm doing everything just pretty much, when I'm doing that kind of stuff, it's all SSH.
It's just straight up SSH, simple stuff, VT100.
So there you go. I would say, I also checked out, by the way, for this review, I looked at Mint's Debian edition that you can get with XFCE preloaded. And they do their bars at the bottom. It's a 1-bar approach instead of the 2-bar.
It's minty.
And it's got a menu. Yeah, it's got a Mint theme. But you can check it out. It's a pretty straightforward.
It's pretty decent. Well, let me ask you this. All right, so cards on the table. If you did not have to review new desktop environments, if no new desktop environments were going to be coming out, and you had to pick one of them right now for your desktop, would XFCE fall on your list?
Probably not, just because I'm still interested in following the later software development.
There's no new software development, no new desktop environments, because which software you run is irrelevant to the desktop environment. But no new desktop environments coming out, no new Unity, no new GNOME 3. Do you like XFCE enough to use it as your primary?
Yeah.
Would you use it over current Unity stock, current GNOME 3 shell stock, or current KDE stock?
Probably, because I'm using those with the hope that they're going to continue to get better, whereas XFCE is pretty much ready to go.
So that's kind of high praise.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically saying it's fast enough, it's stable enough, it looks good enough to use right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to get to Matt's how-to. He's going to stop by and give you parental controls for your Linux box. And, of course, Matt's how-to segments are brought to you by System76. And Matt produces all of these on the Wild Dog performance rig that they sent him. And we sit here without
those sons of a...
It's all right. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm just saying.
The hosts of the show don't even
the phrase Chris just says was the system that they sent him, Matt, not Brian or Chris. I'm just saying.
But the flip side is the folks at home at least get the little parental controls know how. So thanks to System76 for doing that. Also, we should mention Fedora review next week. We're going to do it, right?
I guess I wouldn't be upset if they made crappy systems. Right. I guess that's the upshot. Is that I'm glad there's beautiful things in the world. I just want some of it. That's what I'm saying.
So we're going to do it, right? Fedora review next weekend? Next Sunday, Fedora on the Linux Action Show.
Oh, God, it is Fedora time.
Yeah. The beefy miracle right here on the show. So I just want to let people know about that. So tune in for that.
Oh, that's going to be killer.
All right, let's toss it to Matt.
And I'm back. All right. Today had a question. Actually, it wasn't today, but it was not too long back. Someone asked me, Matt, I have kids. Kids love Linux. They love Tux Racer. They love all this stuff. But unfortunately, there's also an internet out there, and I don't necessarily want to have them exposed to the wilds of the internet. I'd like to offer them some sort of protection. On other operating little bit of crack there. On other operating systems, we have various parental control software that has different levels of effectiveness. Unfortunately, Linux also has parental control software, but it's not always going to be an easy match. And no software is going to be 100% accurate. There's always going to be different rules and ways around it and that sort of thing. So today we're going to talk a little bit about things you can do to ensure that your kids are safe online, and things you can do as a parent to make sure that they're not having to deal with these issues. First things first, I recommend using something called OpenDNS. And OpenDNS is basically alternative DNS servers other than what's provided to you by your ISP. Another thing you can do before we even dive too deep into that is also keep the computer out in the front room where the kids are at. Make sure that you are aware and are careful as far as live bootable disks and things like that are concerned, because that can always bypass OpenDNS. But at the end of the day, you can do OpenDNS either on your router or you can do OpenDNS on your computer specifically. Today, we're going to be looking at doing it on the computer specifically, and I'm going to assume that you have already got a handle on the live distro thing. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to the Firefox browser here. We're going to open up a window. And, all right. First thing we're going to do is go to opendns.com. And when I've done that, I'm going to then hit the dashboard link at the top. So we'll go to opendns.com. And now I'm going to hit dashboard, which will now actually display the IP address that we have. So when I click that, it's instantly going to show, hey, add network. Yep. I'm going to hit add a network. And I'm going to have my IP address that I'm going to add. I'm going to add that network. It's going to then present me with a new screen. Doesn't show my IP address per se, but it does give me the option of giving it a friendly name. I'm going to call it blah, 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 because, I don't care. And it's just for me, and this is only for my benefit. It's really not an issue. If you want to be more literal, you can do maybe home. If you're not happy in home, you can call it other things, but you can call it whatever you want. Maybe it's the office. Maybe it's a laptop. Whatever you want to give it a friendly name. It's simply used to allow you to recognize basically what this particular IP address represents to you as a person, much like a web address does, like google.com associates itself to an IP address. Now, because you're using most likely a dynamic IP address assigned to you by your internet service provider, you're going to want to make sure that, yes, it's dynamic, not you, but the IP address is in fact checked off. Make sure that's checked. Say, yep, it's dynamic. And it's going to say, hey, I noticed you're using Unix. Actually, you're using Linux, but it's all good. And it's going to say, hey, you might want to go ahead and check out this client here. And it's going to allow your computer to talk to OpenDNS and say, hey, got a new IP address, man. You might want to be aware of it. So you'll want to make sure to go ahead and download that. And I will actually provide you better documentation that's on the homepage that's more specific to Ubuntu, and it will actually provide you a step-by-step on how to use it with OpenDNS. And I'll do that in the show notes because it's really involved and really long, and I don't want to put you through that. So jumping back to this, I'm going to hit done, and that's going to bring back the IP address that I entered earlier. So I'm going to click that done there, and it's going to have that there, and I'm going to go ahead and say, that's great. I'm going to go to stats. And it's going to bring up all the information on my network, and it's going to say, hey, there's nothing going on. Do you want to enable stats? I can enable them. That's great. Now, coming back to the dashboard here, I'm going to I've got a network live. That's great. I want to get into the parental control stuff. Now, there's undoubtedly a faster, easier way of doing this, but I found that the layout's a little interesting. So for me, getting to parental controls is honestly just easier to go back to the homepage. And go to opendns.com, and we're going to go, yes, for home. And I'm going to go parental controls, and I'm going to go to OpenDNS. And again, all this will be in the show notes. And if I find a shorter way to get to this, I'll just give you a direct link, but I'm just walking you through it. I'm going to sign up now. I've already created a user account, and it's going to ask me to set up my computer to be compatible with OpenDNS. Now, I've already done this just to save some time, but I'm going to walk you through the process. I clicked on computer. I'm going to click on Ubuntu. It's going to give me a general walkthrough as to how I can set up OpenDNS to work with my computer specifically, not my router. Because perhaps you don't want it on all your computers, and I know I'm certainly that way. I mean, I like it for some things and not others. Once you've followed all the instructions, and they're pretty thorough for this part of it, you're going to click test your new settings. It's going to say, hey, success, you're using OpenDNS because you followed the instructions and you've done everything it's told it to. I'm going to bring it back to the dashboard. and it will then bring me back to the network, and it brought me back to where I started. But again, we needed to get it all set up ahead of the time anyhow. So let's see. Need to go to account settings, parental controls. Settings for that. Settings, moderate, customization. Okay, so we're on parental controls now. And you're going to want to select the type of parental controls. You're going to want to basically high, moderate, or low. So when you're doing high, moderate, or low, you're going to basically be selecting what type of, what level of security you want. High is basically, I want to make sure that my child is exposed to nothing that's potentially objectionable, nothing that's going to really freak you out or really present any concerns. Moderate is a little more leeway, more concentrating on adult content and extreme violence and things like that. And then there's low, to where it's like, as long as it's not bunnies pulling their heads off and stuff like that, it's not really a big deal. You make your selection, you hit OK, and you save it. It generally takes between 3 to 15 minutes to take effect. I recommend rebooting your computer so that everything kind of flushes out and renews. And once you come back in, you can then test it. And by gosh, you will find that when you go to adult-oriented content, it's going to give you a blocked page. It's going to basically have an OpenDNS logo saying, sorry that you're not able to do this on this computer. You're out of luck. What's cool about it is that it's really difficult for the kids to configure a way around that unless they are, in fact, computer gurus. And I will offer a separate segment on how to work with kids and this type of stuff that are very computer literate, that are able to get around all the things you're doing. But for most kids, this isn't going to be an issue. All they're going to know is they can't get to the stuff they want to do, and it's not going to be a real issue in that respect. So pretty easy to do. And I'll provide all the goodies in the show notes, but OpenDNS is the most reliable means on Linux to make sure your kids aren't accessing content you don't want to. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, Matt, I've heard about all these applications that are GNOME-specific or KDE-specific that are designed to do much the same thing that run locally. That's true, but unfortunately, there's an issue with the fact that they're not always that well supported. Sometimes the developer runs a little behind on the next release. There's a library conflict, or perhaps the filters that are installed are not reflective of the latest content that's out there, and it's more based on keywords or other things that there's other ways of getting around it to where they're not as reliable. OpenDNS has the advantage of keeping all that stuff real dynamic. So that ship has sailed, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. That's really all there is to it. Now, again, I can't stress enough, read the show notes carefully, make absolutely sure you test OpenDNS yourself before unleashing your kids out onto the internet and assuming it's fine. Be very, very sure of that. Also, make sure that you run through the tests that I'll provide in the show notes to make sure that your dynamic DNS client is self-updating, making sure that's all doing what it needs to do, because, again, you don't want the IP address to change and all of a sudden it doesn't work. That's really all there is to it. OpenDNS, not locally installed software for your parental controls. Highly recommend it. Check it out. Back to you guys.
And that brings us to the end of this glorious Sunday morning. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us. Oh, I almost forgot. If you're watching this and it's still Sunday, I've got a bundle deal going over at lunduke.com.
I don't believe you. I think
go to lunduke.com and scroll all the way the heck to the bottom, and you can buy a whole bunch of my software.
I've never heard of it before.
It's lunduke.com, Chris. Lunduke.com. But it's all the way at the bottom.
That sounds made up.
The bundle ends on like morning of Monday, so if I might let it slide for a few hours Monday morning. But not very long. Not very long.
You're gonna sleep in.
I'm gonna sleep in. Yeah. That's honestly what it is. Here's the thing: is technically the bundle ends at midnight Sunday, but I'm not gonna stay up till midnight. My kid's going to exhaust me today, and I'm going to go to bed at 8.
Yeah.
And then come in the morning, I'm not going to wake up until at least 7 if I can avoid it.
Take advantage of Brian's sleepiness now while you still can.
So there's a deal on there. I think it's like $25 right now for all of my different stuff and games. I think I call it what did I call it? I called it something witty. Crap, I can't remember. Oh yeah, build stuff and then play a game or something like that.
That's a great bundle.
Something like that.
So there you go. Check it out over on Brian's site. Also, don't forget, go check out the new episode of The Unfilter.
Because it's awesome and has water drops.
Yeah.
That is a pipe crying with a red blood.
Whoa there, scroll. Whoa. You know what that is right there? Do you know what that is?
That right there.
Shh, don't tell anybody. This is a family friendly show. Don't say what that is. They'll just have to go watch Unfiltered to find out. So, all right. And of course, you can get hold of us. I am Chris LAS on Twitter.
I'm Brian Lunduke. You can find me everywhere.
Also on Google Plus, we have links to both those in the show notes. and as well as to the network calendar, so you can see when all of our different shows are live. And if we move this one, that's where you find out. Every now and then we think about it at the last second, but we always try to update the calendar, so you can check that out. And also, if you love our shows, maybe consider doing a new monthly donation, because donations are down, but our bandwidth costs are up. So the two
Fantastic.
don't go together.
That
very
doesn't go
well.
together
no.
well, dude.
So maybe consider that over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/donate.
So if you have a large amount of oil money, we could use some bandwidth assistance, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
But only if you have lots of oil money.
Or gold. You're like Scrooge McDuck, swimming in your money bin,
yeah.
counting it, putting it in your mouth.
If you're like, man, I just don't know. Man, when Scrooge McDuck came out from, he's in his, in his tighties,
Yeah.
and he comes out and he's swimming around in the
Yeah.
money. And then what always got me is when he's doing the backstroke and he goes,
I know.
spits the gold coins out of his
I know.
mouth like
Yeah.
he's like it's water.
Mhm.
That's where that's where he loses me.
I want to be there with a cup.
Swimming in money, I'm in. But the spitting the money out,
I wouldn't put that in my mouth.
I wouldn't put that in my mouth.
Although you figure if he,
he
swims in it,
polishes it though a lot.
yeah,
You see him polish.
that's what I'm gonna say.
Right.
Yeah, he maybe
What were we talking about?
donations? I think we're wrapping up this week's
I
episode.
think we're racking it up.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning to this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, and we'll see you right back here next week.
Okay. I love nuts in my mouth. Here we go.